Hey guys, welcome to our last lecture of this year for Health and Homelessness Oral Med 651. You guys all know where you are. Just so you guys remember, please try and log your hours and stuff like that. You can reach any of the lectures and other resources at this website, healthandhomelessness.com. If you have additional questions, you can email me or David or talk to us later. With regard to doing service hours and logging hours and things like that, the deadline is June 11th, which is a Wednesday at 5 p.m. Please try and have those in. We want to try and go through them before finals and such. So there's that. Additionally, with this being the end of the year, just kind of give a recap. Some of you may not have experienced all 3 quarters with us, but we went over a ton of topics. As you can see here, there are just so many different facets of this issue. We really just hope that you can take part of this and apply it to what you do out in the field or how you interact with the homeless or just people in general. We just hope it gives you a greater perspective, stuff like that. Additionally, we encourage you guys to keep volunteering. We're going to have a few opportunities during the summer. You can educate others, participate in advocacy. I also think it's an important thing just to care. You guys can stop and talk to homeless people you see on the street. You can talk to other leaders in the community, people that you know are involved. The learning doesn't stop here. Also, additionally, we have, if you're interested in an opportunity of maybe helping lead Health and Homelessness or participate in a greater capacity, you can come and talk to me or David. We're looking for individuals who are passionate and excited. Additionally, you guys all know we got our sign-ups and our evaluations right here. So try and do that. It is our pleasure to introduce
Can I just a couple of things? Oh, sorry.
Work and effort to mention a little bit of gratitude on behalf of David, myself, and the whole class to both Dr. Gendera and Awa, who many of you may know as our AmeriCorps member. This, I believe, concludes her year with us. So I just want to give a round of applause to both of them. I'm going to do it without you. Okay, without further ado, this is Teresa Curry. She is a project manager at Solid Ground, which is a 40-year-old organization that originally started in Fremont and has many different facets. She's here to talk to us today about the housing safety net and how that's related to chronic illness and some of the things we may see with homeless populations or people struggling with housing in general. So without further ado.
Hi, thank you for having me here today. I do want to start off by saying I am a proud WSU grad. I wore my crimson and gray today just for you guys. So, but don't hold it against me. So, should I wear it as like a necklace? Is that how it works? Okay. Is that still picking me up? You still hearing? Okay.
I don't think it's on.
Yes.
Chris left a whole bunch of times.
There we go. Okay. So yes, as I said, I work for Solid Ground. We're a nonprofit social services agency. Our mission is to end poverty. Okay, yeah, so we work to end poverty and undo racism and other root causes of poverty. So yeah, we were founded in Fremont, which back in the 70s was one of the poorest neighborhoods in Seattle, believe it or not. And we changed our name in 2007 just to be more representative of the areas and the people that we serve. So just some stats. In 2012, we served almost 55,000 55,000 individuals throughout King County, programs ranging from all different levels of housing services, housing stabilization, homeless prevention, emergency shelter for families, transitional housing for families and single adults, as well as permanent supportive housing. Not too far from here up at Magnuson Park, Sandpoint, we just completed construction of 3 new buildings. We've got, I think, over 400 people now living out at Sandpoint in our programs. This program is also in partnership with Lifelong. Lifelong's mission is to empower people living with or at risk of HIV/AIDS or other chronic conditions. They were formed in 2001 through the merger of Chicken Soup Brigade, which is a food program, and the Northwest AIDS Foundation. And so Lifelong is primarily a community health organization. They have food, housing, and health services for people with HIV and other chronic conditions. So they have medical case management, insurance advocacy, and actually run an insurance program, nutrition, food services, public policy, HIV prevention, and education. So that's their story. So the Lifelong Housing Safety Net is a partnership between Solid Ground and Lifelong. It was a program that was created about 1.5 years ago through national mortgage settlements. The state of Washington got a whole bunch of money, as did pretty much every other state, to assist folks impacted by the foreclosure crisis. So our program is designed specifically to address the needs of households that have experienced a foreclosure in the last couple of years, and that there's also someone in the household with a chronic illness. So we have short-term rental assistance, rental and utility arrears. We can help people with moving, deposits is a big one. A lot of folks really just need help with, deposit, first month's rent. And also, since all of our clients have someone in the household with a chronic illness, depending on the severity of that, lots of people can't pack or move on their own. So we can hire movers to help facilitate that. And then, we don't, unfortunately, help prevent foreclosure, but Solid Ground does have a mortgage counseling program that can help people with that. We can also do, our program is really flexible, which is awesome, so we can help people with other things that other programs lots of times can't. We can help people with storage units. Lots of times people, when a foreclosure happens, especially if they're tenants of the foreclosed property, they might not have had any idea that the foreclosure was coming, and so they have to leave on very short notice. So we can help people hire movers and pay for storage for a couple months so that they aren't rushed out and have to leave everything behind and lose all their possessions in the process of losing their housing. We can also connect people to, we have a tenant counseling program, teach people about their rights as tenants, connection to our financial fitness program, the whole spectrum of Solid Ground and Lifelong services. So our program, we actually can serve people in 13 different counties in Western Washington, which is pretty awesome. Most agencies or programs can only serve, a small area, their city, their county, because of where the funding comes from. I don't know if any of your presenters have talked about, the way that we address homelessness or prevent homelessness is very much related to how it is funded or not funded. So you can only do what you have the money to do. And so you have to get creative sometimes to actually meet the needs of folks. So we can serve people in 13 different counties in Western Washington, low income and household member living with a chronic illness. So we define chronic illness, our program. When we started this program, we didn't have a definition of chronic illness that we were working off of, so that was actually kind of one of the first things I had to do was define that. This is the definition we use to determine eligibility. It can be any member of the household. This is based on the World Health Organization's definition of chronic illness. And then we just specify that we are really inclusive with this definition. So we include chronic mental health conditions, psychosocial disorders, developmental disorders, and also chemical dependency. Even if you don't have any other diagnosed chronic illness, we would consider chemical dependency as a chronic illness in and of itself. And usually, as most of you know, chemical dependency is usually co-occurring with other issues. So that is, so here's just a little bit of information about chronic illness in the United States. Nearly half the adult population is living with a chronic condition. And over a quarter of the population have 2 or more chronic conditions. And these rates have been increasing for years for various reasons, and just expected to keep growing. And so about a quarter of people living with chronic illness have experienced limitations in their daily activities. So like arthritis is the most common cause of disability in the US. 46 million people have arthritis, about 19 million of those. It's enough to significantly impact their daily life. Chronic diseases cause 7 out of 10 deaths in the US every year. Heart disease, cancer, and stroke are the 3 leading causes of death in the United States for the general population. So when we talk about homelessness, everything's even, it's even a more grim picture. The mortality rate for homeless people is 4 to 9 times higher than that of the general population. Looking just at cardiovascular diseases, homelessness is associated with a higher than average burden of risk factors. It's 3 times more common among the homeless than in the general population. And poverty and the effects of poverty is just one of the major social determinants of cardiovascular disease. So that's here on mental health. Mental health is also much more prevalent, mental health issues, conditions, much more prevalent in the homeless population. Looking just at women and mothers who are homeless, that 3 times the rate of post-traumatic stress and 2 times the rate of drug and alcohol dependence as mothers in the general population. And so I think this is one of those things that it's important to point out, is that trauma is both a cause and an effect of homelessness. Numerous studies on homeless families and individuals show past histories of trauma throughout people's lives that often lead up to the circumstance of homelessness. And then homelessness in and of itself is a traumatic experience, as you can imagine, and it opens you up to vulnerabilities for even more traumatic experiences, sexual assault, violence, things like that. So, an example from our program of someone with a chronic illness. Mark is a client. You can see his general kind of stats here. His house was foreclosed in 2013. He's divorced. He's not in great shape. When I first, met with him, it was pretty grim. He's got multiple chronic conditions, including, some cancer and side effects from radiation treatment, internal bleeding and radiation burns, on top of everything else. And so his home was foreclosed. He had to be out. He had nowhere to go. He had some friends in his church that he could stay with for a couple of weeks, and then that was it. His income is SSI, supplemental security income. I'll go into a little more about what that stuff is later if you guys don't know all those little acronyms and such. So his income is only $710 a month. That can't get you anything in Seattle. So we were left with, well, what can we do? This guy is going to be on the street, and he has no physical condition, to be on the street. So again, luckily our funding is really flexible, so we were able to put him in a motel to prevent him from being on the street in, very delicate medical condition. And we had him there for about 6 months, while, he was still coming here to UW Medical Center almost weekly, to meet with his doctors. And we just, while he was looking for a room to rent, because that's about the only thing you could get for $710 a month. And we luckily, as I mentioned earlier, Solid Ground just
finished our last couple buildings out at Sandpoint. One of those buildings is permanent supportive housing for adults. We were able to get him in there, one of the very first residents in that building. He moved in there in January. And it's been, you know, if not for that building opening, I don't know where he would be right now. He might still be in the motel. Sure.
Very good, not over this, but do you guys try to, so when you get people coming to your organization, do you deal with families first and then single people, or do you not worry about that?
No, our program is anybody. It could be individuals or families. You know, we take anybody that has a need. So other programs are different. You know, some programs are specifically for single adults or specifically for families. Our program doesn't differentiate or prioritize.
Is there a time limit in which they could stay in these residences?
Yeah, well, for Kitty Place, that one is permanent supportive housing. So there's not a time limit on that. For the motel and our other assistants, yes, you know, we don't have kind of hard limits because we don't want to leave somebody, especially somebody with a chronic illness, out on the street, but there are limitations to our funding. So our program generally has about a 1 year maximum that we can support somebody, be that, hopefully not in a motel, but we have had a couple of folks that have been in the motel for 6 months, 8 months, because there's just nothing out there. Housing affordability is kind of the root cause of a lot of problems for the people we serve. But most people, it's dependent on need. You know, other folks, we pay their deposit and, you know, help them get moved in, and then they're good, you know, because they are still able to work, you know, or maybe it's a child that has the chronic condition, so the parent does still have an income that, you know, makes it so that they can afford the rents around here. So it really just depends. Yes.
Is there a monthly fee for Kenny Place?
Yes, so it's a tax credit program. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that program. The low-income housing tax credit is a federal program that kind of leverages private funding to develop affordable housing. Basically, they get taxed. They don't have to pay certain taxes in order to keep the building affordable for low-income populations. So you have to actually have a certain, you know, your income has to be in a certain window to qualify to be in that housing, and then you pay, I think this building, some places do it, you pay a percentage of your income towards rent, like Section 8 vouchers. You pay 30% of your income for the rent because that's what is considered affordable. This property, they just have a flat rent. I think the rent is like $300 a month for everybody in the building. Yeah. So for Mark, we got lucky and got him in there. And luckily, since he's been in there, he hasn't had any visits to the emergency room, which for him was a big deal because the year before, he had at least 4 emergency room visits. That was one of the things when he was moving in, was making sure that he was in a unit. That was, he wanted to be in the one right next to the elevator, and that was accessible, you know, so that EMTs could get him in and out really quickly. So, yes.
Just quickly, do you guys pay for a hotel? And what's the general cost of it?
So it varies. We do, so we can assist with motel if it's the only option, like if somebody's going to be on the street, you know, if they have family to stay with, or if there's, you know, a viable shelter option, we would encourage them to, you know, we would have them do that first, but we can pay for motel. For this program only, it's very unique. Most places you can't get a motel, it's really just for this program. We have a contract with the extended stays, so people, so it's nice, people actually usually are there for months at a time as opposed to days or weeks. So they have like a little kitchenette unit, you know, people can actually kind of live there, and so they give us a decent rate, but it depends on the neighborhood. Yeah.
What are the grounds for termination within the program? You know, what if somebody goes to jail, or if somebody breaks the rules of the motel for whatever reason?
Yeah, so we luckily haven't had to deal with that really too much. I mean, yeah, obviously if somebody, we have had a couple folks that have had some issues at the motels. If you break the rules and get kicked out of the motel, then, well, sorry, you did get kicked out of the motel. We won't necessarily kick them out of the program because, you know, just because it really just depends on the situation, on what the circumstances are. You know, we have had to exit a couple of people from the program because we're not, you know, we want to help people, but you also have to help yourselves to some extent as well. So if there are folks that are, you know, when we meet with somebody, we set out kind of a general action plan, some goals, some steps to be taken, you know, over the next couple of weeks, next couple of months. And if people are not meeting goals, then we do have discussions about, well, you know, not sure what we can really do for you if you're not kind of doing your part too. It's a balance. I mean, obviously people have reasonable things like, yeah, I ended up having to go back to the hospital or whatever, you know, we take all of that into consideration, but we do, you know, try to hold people accountable, you know, as much as we can. So Mark is just one example. So I want to talk about another issue that we face a lot. So, are you guys familiar with ABD, PEN, SSI, SSDI? So, ABD is a state program. It stands for Aged, Blind, and Disabled. It is a cash assistance program for people that are unemployed and considered, you know, temporarily disabled. So you can get, well, actually, for that program, basically, it's people that the state thinks that you would meet the federal guidelines to receive SSI or SSDI, disability, basically. Then they'll give you that assistance as a bridge until, you know, they'll help you with your application for federal benefits, because then they get reimbursed for whatever they paid you when you get approved for federal benefits. But so, for folks that are disabled, can't work, don't have, you know, long-term disability insurance, aren't yet on Social Security disability, this is their only income, $197 a month. And you can get food stamps too, but that's it. So I've had a number of clients that this is their only income. And this is down. It used to be higher before the state budget issues. It was $394 a month. It's kind of like, well, can't do anything with that either. But the $197 a month, that's the reality for a lot of people in Washington State right now. If the state determines that you're not like permanently disabled, you're just kind of temporarily disabled, then you would probably get approved for HEN, Housing and Essential Needs. This is no cash assistance. It means you basically just get Medicaid, and you are eligible for, each county has a different agency that leads that. Here in King County, it is Catholic Community Services. And so you can go into Catholic Community Services every week and get, you know, toiletries, household items, things that you can't buy with food stamps. I don't know if any of you guys know that food stamps, you can't buy diapers, toilet paper, toothpaste, soap, food only. So you can go into Catholic Community Services and get those toiletries and things. You can also get bus tickets, or if you're lucky enough to have a vehicle, then you can get some vouchers for gas. But as I said, no cash assistance, but you are eligible for, if you happen to have a place to stay, they can help with your rent. I think they have like either a 6 or 8 month limit, and it's around a $600 or $800 per month limit. So if you are lucky enough to have a place to stay somewhere that is within that limit, they can assist you with your rent for those 6 to 8 months. So those are the state benefit programs for people with disabilities. Yes?
So I might have missed it, but did you say HEN is for temporarily disabled people, and ADD is for permanently disabled?
Yeah, generally. I don't know exact, it's kind of how DSHS kind of oversees these programs, and how they make that determination is not exactly clear, but that's kind of generally what it seems to be. Federal benefits, SSI is supplemental security income. This is for people that are kind of disabled, unable to work, but haven't paid enough into Social Security to get Social Security disability. So lots of folks who, I see a lot of, it seems like, this is just my experience, it seems like more women receive SSI because maybe they haven't been in the workforce as long, they haven't paid as much into Social Security. I've had a number of people who are immigrants who, again, haven't been working in the United States long enough to have the credits with Social Security to qualify for Social Security disability. So you get supplemental security income, which is $721 a month. And again, that's the maximum. If you do any work alongside of that, like, you know, I have a client who babysits for her daughter, she has to report that income, and then they deduct that from her $721. So you can't couple the state benefits with federal benefits, it's one or the other. Once you get approved for SSI, you stop receiving ABD or HEN. Social Security disability is, again, it's an insurance program, it's disability insurance. So folks that have been living and working in the United States, you know, you pay your Social Security tax on every paycheck you get. If you've paid enough into that, then you could, and are determined by the feds to be, you know, permanently disabled, unable to work, then you can get approved for SSDI, and your benefit is based on like your average income before when you were working. So the average benefit is around $1145 a month. The maximum benefit is $2,600 a month. I've never seen somebody with that. Most of the clients I've seen get around $1,200 or $1,300 a month. And again, you can, Social Security, SSDI is a little bit more lenient. You can, it's kind of weird, you can work a little bit part-time along with that. But it's, again, there's a cap on it. You can only earn a certain amount a month before they then deduct it from your SSDI. So, and again, even these SSI or SSDI amounts, that's still not enough to get an apartment, you know, in King County anywhere, really. So even when people, you know, it's like this huge relief, and, you know, and it's a celebration when you get approved for SSI or SSDI, because you're like, oh my gosh, I finally have money, but it's still not enough to live on, really. So that's a challenge that a lot of my clients are facing. The other challenge with SSI, SSDI is the wait times to get approved. You apply, and lots of people will get denied the first time. Most people have to appeal at least once, and it can take months. So just one example of that is, so this is just one example. This is the, if you appeal, you can get assigned a hearing with a judge to appeal your case. So this is just one example. I don't know if you can see that very well. So in Seattle, the average wait time for an SSI or SSD hearing is 10.5 months. The average case processing time in Seattle is 349 days. The average for winning a hearing is 29%. So not great odds, and it takes a lot of time. Yes?
So I was wondering how you would be able to help advocate for the client during this time, because it seems like it's a pretty long process, and especially if like a client goes to a DSHS office and they have to interview with a psychologist there to qualify, and they have PTSD and they don't make it the first time. What would your organization do to help with that?
Yeah, so we have a program called Family Assistance. They are attorneys that work with people on appeals or complaints with DSHS for state benefits. And then there are other organizations that can assist people with appeals and complaints with Social Security for federal benefits. So most places like DSHS, you know, won't necessarily talk to me. You know, if I'm somebody's case manager, you know, and I call or something like that, have a release of information, they still usually won't kind of talk with you, except usually, you know, the attorneys and things like that. They have specific protocols that they go through for determining cases and appeals and things like that.
And then I have another question. Do you know like the success rate of like a client that goes to get interviewed by the psychologist? Like what is the rate of them actually being approved for these programs?
I don't know that much. You mean the state programs or the federal programs?
So, because you have to go to the local
Right.
DSHS office.
Yeah, and they refer you to one of their folks for evaluation. I don't know the rate of that. I'm not sure if that's something you could like, Google or not. I'm not sure. Let's see. How do we go back? I don't know max. I don't know max. Okay. All right. Thank you. So, again, kind of an example of some of the reality of life when you have a disability and are receiving benefits. So Terry and Tom are a married couple. Their home was foreclosed. When they were referred to us, they were living in a car. Terry has multiple chronic conditions. She has a really rare heart condition that they don't really know what to do. And their income was $197 a month, ABD, for Terry. Tim is a citizen of the United Kingdom and overstayed his visas. He cannot work legally or receive any benefits. And they also don't have the thousands of dollars it takes to start the process for him to become, you know, employable or have a valid green card or anything. So she first applied for SSDI in December of 2010. It was on her third appeal. So we, again, first put them in a motel because they were living on the street, and that's not safe for anyone, especially someone with her serious medical conditions. And then we did actually get them into a rental. They were able to find a landlord that was willing to rent to them on the hope that she would be getting approved for disability and knowing that we could assist them. And it's actually, most places it would be cheaper for us to pay all of somebody's rent, I mean, depending on the exact rent, but cheaper for us to pay their rent than to pay for the motel for a month, even with our contract with extended stay. So it was kind of a risk, not knowing what the results of her appeal was going to be. She didn't even have a hearing date scheduled yet when we did this, but you know, like I said, it was also just, you know, it's cheaper than in the motel, and it gives people a little more kind of dignity and independence. So we helped them get into housing, and we're paying the rent. And she finally had her SSDI hearing scheduled in February, and she was actually approved, so that was very exciting. And then we had to wait actually about 6 weeks until payment began, but she actually finally got her first payment last month, and next month they're going to be on their own, paying their own rent. They're going to be able to make it with her. She actually, her job before, I guess, was higher than average paying, so she's actually getting benefits of around $1,400, $1,500 a month, which is like one of the highest I've seen. And so they're going to be able to make it. So that risk paid off for us and for them. So that was awesome. So a little information about foreclosure. In Washington State, foreclosure is a series of notices that are given out on a specific timeline. This is what's called as a non-judicial foreclosure process. Other states have a judicial process where you actually go to court with the lender or the trustee to, I don't know, kind of resolve the foreclosure, and then it's done through a court process, but ours is just a series of legal notices. So basically the summary of that is once you've been in default for 90 days, a notice of trustee's sale can be issued. And these are all minimum timeframes. Sometimes the banks take longer to do this. In Washington State, we do have a law that was passed in 2011 where people do have 20 days to pursue mediation. And this law requires the banks to negotiate in good faith and actually have someone there that can make a decision on if you get a modification on your loan. Because before this law, you might meet with a bank representative, but they could just be somebody that didn't have any authority to actually make a decision, so you couldn't actually resolve anything in the mediation because they'd have to go back and get permission, all this stuff. So, but if no resolution is reached in mediation, the foreclosure process resumes. They have public auction, After the sale, if you're the owner residing inside the property, you have 20 days to vacate the property. That's it. But presumably you've gotten all these other notices, so you've had time to make a plan. Renters, the federal law and the state law are different. So you get either 60 to 90 days notice from the date of the auction. Unless the new owner is going to be using it as a rented property as well, in which case they have to honor your current lease. But if they're not, and if you didn't know the foreclosure was coming, you could just be like, oh, just found out, I have to move in 2 months, you know, and you're really not going to get back any of your deposit. Usually the landlords the previous landlords who paid the deposit to have long disappeared. So the National Mortgage Settlement happened in 2012. It was a settlement with the 5 largest banks for the atrocities of that created the housing crisis. So it provided direct relief to borrowers in the states who signed on to the settlement. In case you're wondering, Oklahoma is the only state that did not sign on. So individuals who had lost their homes got direct payments. I think most people got around $800 for losing their home, so it doesn't really make up for much. And then states also got money to the states to do things. And I only recently learned that Washington State is one of the only ones that actually took that money to create programs such as this to assist people that have been affected. Other states just threw it into their general fund budget. So in Washington State, this is what they created. You can look this stuff up at the state attorney general's office. But basically, there was like 40-some million, you can do the math, that was given out. And so 18 million went to these different organizations for mortgage relief. They actually kind of categorize us in there, even though we don't assist you to prevent foreclosures. These other places do. They'll help to catch you up, or give you they'll pay off your balances off the foreclosure and give you a new low-interest loan. Lots of money went for legal assistance for people who try to prevent or mitigate foreclosure. You can see all that stuff there. And then, is that one? Yay, okay. And just another. So these are the kind of the coverage of the programs. So some of the programs only cover certain areas. Ours is kind of that, I don't know what you call that, that reddish, orangish one that, and then kind of stripes down. That's the area we can cover with our program. So just one final example of, the type of households we've assisted. Carissa and Dan is a married couple they have a teenager and a teenage grandchild, plus Dan's 92-year-old mother living in the household. Carissa and Dan both have chronic conditions, as does his 92-year-old mother. If you make it to 92 without any medical issues, that's amazing. So their income was higher than most because, Carissa's working full-time, professional position, and Dan receives SSDI, and his mother receives regular Social Security. So their income was higher than most of the clients we see, but their deposit disappeared when the property was foreclosed. Their landlord disappeared with that, so they had, who has $3,000 lying around to pay deposit first and last month's rent? I don't. So they didn't either. And so we paid deposit, first month's rent, and assisted with a graduated subsidy for a couple of months, and they're back on track. So this is just some general stats about a program we launched in April 2013, and we're expecting to wrap up the program at the end of this year. As of May 6th, we serve 89 households. 69 of those are households currently enrolled, 20 have exited. Of the ones that have exited, 14 are stably housed, 4 are housed, but it's not necessarily a permanent situation. 1 still homeless, and 1 actually died. It's really sad. He died in the motel the day before he was actually going to be moving into permanent housing. He had signed a lease the day before and didn't show up the next day to pick up his keys. So that was a sad one. But yeah, so of the active households, 31 of them received rental assistance, a partial rental subsidy in May. 21 are searching for stable housing. 9 of them are in motels because they had to be out of the foreclosed property. The others are either maybe still in the foreclosed property because they haven't been forced out yet, staying with family or friends. So yeah, 65 of the households are under 30% area median income, which is considered very low income. 15 are 31 to 50% of area median income, which is considered low income. And just a couple are in the 51 to 80% AMI. So basically, what AMI means is 100% of AMI means you are right at the average median income, the average income for the county or the region that you live in. So everybody is under the average, just a matter of how much below the average you're at. So 40% of the households we served were owners of the home who was foreclosed, and actually 60% were people that were renting a home from a private owner, and that private owner was foreclosed and they were displaced. We have 13 counties that we can serve. We serve people everywhere except Skamania County and, I don't know how to say this, Waukegan County. 70% have been in King County. Then just break down the different types of assistance we've provided to different households. And then this is just our contact information for people that just want more information or potential clients. That's a number, that's my number. And I also brought, if you guys are interested, a fact sheet on Lifelong, also a brochure for our program, and a little slip that's for the family assistance program. Those would be attorneys that can help people who are having problems with TSHS, state benefits, and things like that. So, any more questions or yes?
Can you talk a little bit about Section 8 vouchers, like how do you qualify for them, how do you get them, what exactly is it?
So Section 8 vouchers, that's a federal program that you have to, income qualify for, and then they subsidize your rent. You pay 30% of your income towards the rent, and they pay the rest. Section 8s are very competitive. There's not enough out there at all. The waiting lists in King County, King County Housing Authority and Seattle Housing Authority are closed. Every 5 or 6 years, they'll open their waiting list, and you'll have a 2-week period to submit your application. Then they do a random lottery of all the applications they receive, and they'll number them, in the order they draw them, 1 through 2,000, and then that's the waiting list that they work off of for the next 5 years. So the last lottery happened, for I think it was Seattle Housing Authority, about a year and a half ago, and they got, I think, 12,000 applications for their 2,000 slot waiting list. So that's the picture of that. So it's a great program, and it is a great assistance for people that are, people that are on disability, people that are low income for whatever reasons, seniors, but there's just not enough out there. So. Any other questions? I hope I didn't bore you too much or paint too grim of a picture. I realize I'm well, that's kind of a downer, but that's what it's like for people that are homeless or low income, unstable housing. It's a situation. When I sucked, you can blame it on the